Beloved, before the foundations of the earth were laid, before the first light broke across the face of the deep, before time itself had learned to count its own passing, there was a plan. Not a general plan, not a broad and sweeping intention aimed at humanity as a whole, but a specific, detailed, personally crafted plan, with your name written at the top of it. A plan that included your purpose, your path, your provision, and yes, beloved, your financial freedom. A plan so precise that every resource you would ever need, every door that would ever need to open, every connection that would ever need to be made, was already accounted for, already arranged, already secured in the invisible storehouse of a God who does not plan carelessly and does not provide halfway. This is not poetry. This is not the language of comfort designed to make you feel better about a difficult season. This is the literal, spiritual, unshakable truth of your existence. You were not born into this world and then left to figure out the financial dimension of your life on your own. You were not released into time with a purpose and without the provision to fulfill it. That would be a contradiction of divine nature, and God does not contradict himself. Where he sends, he supplies. Where he calls, he equips. Where he plants a purpose, he prepares a prosperity. And the prosperity he prepared for you was not an afterthought. It was the very first thought. It was written into the plan before the plan had a beginning. So why, beloved, are you not living in it? Why does the financial freedom that was designed specifically for you feel so far away? Why does the provision that was secured in the heavenly ledger before your birth feel so inaccessible in the daily reality of your life? Why are you sitting in the waiting room of financial struggle when God already signed and sealed the deed to your abundance before you ever arrived to claim it? These are not rhetorical questions. They are the most important questions of your financial life. And today, with honesty and love and the precision of one who has spent years studying the laws that govern the invisible realm, we are going to answer them. Every single one of them. Because you deserve to know not just that the plan exists, but exactly why you keep missing it and exactly what you must do, starting today, to find your way back onto the path that was always meant to be yours. Let us begin with the nature of the plan itself, because you cannot find what you do not understand, and you cannot align with something whose shape you have never clearly seen. God's financial plan for your life is not a lottery. It is not a random dispensation of wealth distributed to the lucky and withheld from the unlucky. It is not favor shown to the spiritual elite and denied to the ordinary seeker. God's financial plan for your life is a living, breathing, precisely engineered blueprint that takes into account your specific gifts, your specific purpose, your specific assignment on this earth, and the specific resources required to fulfill that assignment with excellence and abundance. It is personal. It is particular. It has your fingerprints on it because it was made for your hands specifically. And here is the first thing you must understand about this plan. It was designed to work with you, not despite you. It was not created as an obstacle course where you must prove your worthiness before the gates swing open. It was created as a partnership, a divine collaboration between the infinite wisdom of God and the free will, the choices, the beliefs, the words, and the actions of the human being he entrusted with that specific purpose. God provides the blueprint and the materials. But beloved, you are the builder. And if the builder does not show up, if the builder builds in the wrong location, if the builder uses the wrong materials, or follows the wrong set of instructions, the most perfect blueprint in the world will never become a building. This is why so many people who are genuinely called, genuinely gifted, genuinely loved by God, are not living in the financial freedom that was planned for them. Not because the plan failed, not because God changed his mind, not because the provision ran out or was redirected to someone more deserving, but because somewhere between the divine blueprint and the human building, something went wrong. And in most cases, that something is not dramatic. It is not a single catastrophic mistake that derailed everything. It is a series of small, quiet, seemingly insignificant misalignments that accumulated over time until the life being lived bears almost no resemblance to the life that was planned. Today, we are going to identify those misalignments. We are going to name them clearly, lovingly, and without condemnation, because the God who wrote your plan is not standing over you with a record of your failures. He is standing before you with the blueprint still in his hands, still intact, still valid, still waiting for you to turn back toward it and say, show me where I went wrong. Show me where the path is. I am ready to walk it. The first misalignment, beloved, and perhaps the most foundational of all, is the misalignment of identity. Before God could write a financial plan for your life, He had to establish who you are. And who you are, in the truest and most permanent sense, is not what your circumstances have told you. It is not what your bank account reflects. It is not what your upbringing suggested, or what your failures confirmed, or what the voice of lack has been whispering to you since you were old enough to understand that some people have more than others. Who you are is a child of the living God, an heir to the kingdom of abundance, a carrier of divine purpose, and a vessel specifically designed to hold and distribute the overflow of heavenly provision. This is your identity. This is the truth, written at the top of the blueprint, and the financial plan that follows from this identity is consistent with it. It is an abundant plan. It is a free plan. It is a plan in which lack has no permanent address and struggle has no final word. But beloved, if you do not know this identity, if you have traded it for a smaller, fear-based, circumstance-defined version of yourself, then you will not recognize the plan when it appears before you. You will walk past open doors because you do not believe they are meant for someone like you. You will dismiss divine opportunities because your identity says you are not qualified. You will sabotage your own breakthrough at the very moment it arrives because some deep part of you is more comfortable with the familiar territory of not enough than with the unfamiliar landscape of overflow. Identity is the lens through which you see every financial opportunity, every open door, every divine arrangement. And if that lens is clouded by a false identity, one built from rejection and lack and the accumulated evidence of past struggle, then everything you see through it will be distorted. The opportunity will look like a risk too great. The open door will look like a trap. The divine arrangement will look like coincidence, too good to be trusted. And so you will stay where you are, not because the plan failed, but because the lens through which you were reading it was showing you something that was never true. So the first work, beloved, the first and most essential step back toward God's financial plan for your life, is the work of reclaiming your true identity. Not as an exercise in positive thinking, not as a motivational technique, but as a spiritual act of alignment with the truth that was written about you before time began. You are not a financial victim. You are not defined by your current balance. You are not the sum of your past financial mistakes. You are the specific, beloved, purposefully created child of a God whose resources are without limit and whose plan for your prosperity is still active, still valid, and still waiting for you to step into it with your full self. Now let us speak about the second misalignment, and this one lives in the territory of purpose. Because, beloved, God's financial plan for your life is inseparable from your purpose. The two were designed together. They were written in the same breath. The provision was attached to the assignment, and the assignment was attached to the provision. You cannot fully access one without walking in the other. This is one of the most misunderstood truths in the entire teaching of abundance, and it is the reason why so many people pursue financial freedom as though it were a destination separate from their calling, a prize to be won before the real work of purpose begins. But the plan does not work that way. The divine economy is not structured so that you accumulate wealth first and then decide what to do with your life. It is structured so that as you align with your purpose, As you move in the direction of the assignment God wrote your name on before you were born, the provision for that assignment flows toward you with increasing abundance. The money follows the purpose, the resources follow the calling. The financial freedom is the byproduct of the alignment, not the prerequisite for it. This is why some people who work extremely hard in careers that have nothing to do with their true calling find the financial rewards always somehow insufficient, always just beyond the level of true freedom, always enough to survive but never quite enough to overflow, not because God is withholding from them, but because the provision was attached to a different address. The abundance was assigned to the version of their life that is aligned with purpose, and until they move toward that alignment, they are, in a very real sense, trying to receive mail at the wrong house. I am not telling you to abandon everything tomorrow in a dramatic gesture of faith. I am telling you to begin moving, even in small and deliberate steps, toward the purpose you know in your deepest heart you were created for. Begin having the conversation with God that says, "Show me the assignment. Show me the path. Show me what you wrote my name on before I arrived." And then listen, carefully and consistently, for the answer, because the answer will come. It always comes to the one who asks with genuine sincerity and a heart open enough to receive an answer that might be larger than they expected. And as you move toward purpose, watch what happens to the provision. Watch how doors begin to open that were firmly closed before. Watch how resources begin to appear from directions you never anticipated. Watch how the financial plan, the one that was written for you before you were born, begins to make itself known in the practical daily reality of your life. Because it was always there, it was always active. It was simply waiting for you to move into the address where the mail was being delivered. Let us now address the third misalignment, and this one is the misalignment of instruction. Beloved, in a world that is absolutely saturated with financial advice, with strategies and systems and philosophies and programs all promising to lead you to wealth and freedom, it is entirely possible, and in fact very common, to spend a lifetime following the wrong set of instructions. Not wrong because they are evil, not wrong because the people who wrote them had bad intentions, but wrong because they were written for a different blueprint. They were designed for a generic financial life, not for the specific, purpose-driven, divinely crafted financial plan that has your name on it. The world's financial instructions say, accumulate, compete, strategize, protect, hoard, and leverage. And some of these principles have their place in a well-ordered financial life. But the divine financial instructions say something different. They say, give, and it will be given to you. They say, seek first the kingdom, and all these things will be added. They say the generous soul will be made rich. They say, honor the Lord with your first fruits, and your barns will overflow. These are not poetic suggestions. They are the operating instructions for the specific financial system that God designed for the lives of those who carry His purpose. And if you are trying to run divine software on worldly operating instructions, you will find constant errors, constant crashes, constant results that do not match the potential of the program you are carrying. This is not to say that practical financial wisdom has no place. Of course it does. Budgeting, saving, investing, building, these are all expressions of the stewardship that the divine plan requires. But they must be built on the foundation of divine instruction, not substituted for it. The foundation must be the kingdom principles, the laws of giving and receiving, of honoring God with your resources, of trusting divine supply over human strategy. And upon that foundation, all of the practical wisdom finds its proper place and produces its proper fruit. So examine today, beloved, the instructions you have been following. Ask yourself honestly, whose blueprint am I building from? Have I been trying to achieve divine results with worldly methods? Have I placed all of my faith in human strategy while giving only a polite nod to divine principle? Have I been running on the world's operating system and then wondering why the divine software keeps crashing? Because if you have, this is not a condemnation. It is simply an invitation to reinstall the original instructions, the ones that were written specifically for the plan that has your name on it, and to build from there. Now, beloved, let us speak about the fourth misalignment, because it is one that touches every area of the financial life, and it is the misalignment of timing. God's financial plan for your life has a timing component. Not because God is slow or reluctant or waiting for you to earn the right to receive, but because every element of the plan was designed to arrive in the right sequence, in the right season, with the right preparation in place. A harvest that arrives before the soil is ready is not a blessing. It is a waste. And God, who is the master of all growth and all seasons, does not send the harvest before the soil of your life, your character, your wisdom, your stewardship capacity, is prepared to receive it and multiply it. This is the truth that reframes every delay in your financial life. Every season of waiting that felt like abandonment was actually a season of preparation. Every closed door that felt like rejection was actually a moment of divine protection, keeping you from entering a room you were not yet ready for. Every financial drought that felt like punishment was actually the time in which the roots of your faith and your wisdom and your character were going deeper, preparing to support the weight of the abundance that was coming. But beloved, here is where so many people miss the timing of God's plan. They experience the delay and they interpret it as denial. They feel the waiting and they read it as rejection. And in response to that misinterpretation, they make a move. They take matters into their own hands. They step off the path of divine timing and onto a detour of human impatience. And that detour costs them not just time but alignment, because every step taken outside of divine timing is a step that must eventually be retraced. Every shortcut that bypasses the preparation season is a shortcut that leads to a dead end. And the sad irony is that in trying to speed up the arrival of the blessing, they actually delay it further, because now the path back to alignment is longer than the original path of patient faithfulness would have been. I speak to someone today who took a detour, who made a move out of impatience, or fear, or the pressure of circumstances, and found themselves further from the financial freedom they were seeking rather than closer to it. And I want you to hear this with every fiber of your being. The detour is not the end of the plan. God does not revoke the blueprint because you took a wrong turn. He simply recalculates. He finds the path from where you are now back to where the plan always intended to take you. And that path is available to you right now, in this moment, the instant you stop, turn your face back toward the source, and say, I am ready to follow the plan again. Show me the way back. The way back always begins with honesty. Honesty about where you are. Honesty about how you got there. Honesty about what you have been doing that has not been aligned with divine instruction. And then, it continues with the one step that is available to you right now. Not the whole journey, just the next step. God rarely shows the whole staircase at once. He illuminates the step directly in front of you and asks you to trust that the one after it will become visible when you have taken the one before it. This is the rhythm of divine guidance. And when you move in this rhythm, even from a place of previous misalignment, you will find that the plan has a remarkable capacity to restore itself, to bring you back to the path of your purpose and provision faster than your human reasoning would have thought possible. Let us speak now about the fifth misalignment, and this one, beloved, lives in the area of fear. Fear is perhaps the single most effective tool the enemy of your financial freedom has ever used against you. Not the dramatic, obvious fear that you recognize and resist, but the quiet, settled, deeply normalized fear that lives in your relationship with money and calls itself wisdom. The fear that says, do not reach too far or you will fall. Do not dream too big or you will be disappointed. Do not trust too completely or you will be let down. Do not believe the promise of abundance because life has shown you evidence of lack, and that evidence is more reliable than any spiritual truth you have been taught. This fear feels reasonable. It feels learned and earned. It feels like the appropriate response to a lifetime of financial difficulty. But beloved, it is the very thing that is standing between you and the plan God wrote for your life, because the plan requires faith to access it. Not a small, timid, hedged faith that believes a little and doubts a lot, but a bold, settled, deeply rooted faith that has decided once and for all that God's word about your financial future is more reliable than the evidence of your past. That the plan written in the invisible realm is more real than the circumstances visible in the natural one. That the provision secured in the divine storehouse before your birth has not expired and has not been given to someone else, and will not fail to reach you as long as you remain aligned with the path that leads to it. Fear and faith cannot occupy the same space. They are not two competing forces of equal strength that you must simply choose between. Fear is the absence of faith. It is what fills the space when faith has not yet arrived or has been crowded out by the noise of difficult circumstances. And the way to displace fear is not to fight it directly, but to fill the space so completely with faith, with the Word of God, with the truth of the plan, with the evidence of divine faithfulness in your own past and in the lives of those who have gone before you, that there is simply no room left for fear to occupy. Begin today to fill the space. Fill it with the truth that the plan for your financial freedom was written before you were born. Fill it with the evidence of every time in your past that provision came through when you did not know how it would. Fill it with the testimonies of those who stepped out in faith and found the ground solid beneath their feet. Fill it with the word that says, God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Fill every available space with this truth until the fear finds no foothold and the faith stands uncontested in the place where your financial future lives. Now, beloved, I want to speak about something that many teachers of abundance are reluctant to address directly because it touches a tender place in the hearts of those who have given generously and felt that the return was slow in coming, and that is the subject of giving as an act of financial alignment. Not giving as a transaction, not giving because you expect a specific return by a specific date, not giving as a formula that obligates God to respond in a way you have predetermined, but giving as an expression of the identity we spoke of at the beginning. Giving as the act of a person who knows they are connected to an infinite source and therefore has no need to grip tightly to what passes through their hands. Beloved, the financial plan God wrote for your life includes a giving dimension. It is not optional. It is not the advanced level that you graduate to after you have achieved financial freedom. It is built into the foundation of the plan because God knew, before you were born, that the soul who learns to give freely is the soul whose channel of receiving remains permanently open. Giving is not what you do after the overflow arrives. Giving is what creates the conditions for the overflow to flow. Think of it as the law of the open hand. A hand held open can both give and receive. A hand clenched tight around what it has can do neither. When you give, you are practicing the posture of the open hand. You are declaring to the law, to the universe, to the God who wrote the plan, that you are not afraid of running dry, that you trust the source, that you understand yourself to be a channel of divine supply rather than a reservoir that must be jealously guarded. And that declaration, lived out in the practical act of generous giving, opens dimensions of your financial plan that remain closed to the one who holds too tightly. I am not telling you to give what you do not have. I am not asking you to create financial hardship in the name of generosity. I am asking you to find the level at which you can give freely, without fear, without resentment, with genuine joy and genuine trust, and to give at that level consistently, and then to watch, with patient and expectant faith, as the plan that was written to include your generosity begins to reveal itself in ways that your previous gripping had kept hidden. Let us now speak about the sixth misalignment, and this one is the misalignment of environment. Beloved, the environment you inhabit, not just the physical space, but the relational, conversational, informational environment, has a profound effect on your ability to receive and walk in God's financial plan for your life. You cannot spend your days in an atmosphere saturated with the language and energy of lack and expect your receiver to remain tuned to the frequency of abundance. You cannot fill your mind daily with the voices of fear and limitation and expect your faith to remain bold and your vision to remain clear. The people you spend the most time with, the conversations you participate in most regularly, the content you consume most consistently, these are all forming the atmosphere of your inner life. And your inner life, as we have established, is the territory where the plan either takes root or withers. If your closest relationships are characterized by a shared narrative of financial struggle and impossibility, if the conversations you engage in most often rehearse the reasons why abundance is unlikely, if the information you consume most regularly reinforces a worldview of scarcity and competition and fear, then even the most sincere spiritual effort to align with God's plan will be fighting an uphill battle against the current of your environment. This does not mean you abandon everyone who has not yet found their way to abundance consciousness. It means you become deliberate about what you allow to form the atmosphere of your inner life. It means you seek out the voices, the relationships, the communities, the teachings that speak the language of faith and abundance and divine possibility. Not to live in a bubble disconnected from reality, but to ensure that the signal of God's plan for your life is not constantly being drowned out by the noise of a world that does not know the plan exists. Guard your atmosphere, beloved. It is the soil in which the seeds of God's financial plan are trying to grow. Give those seeds the richest possible soil. Surround yourself with people who believe in the bigness of God's provision. Feed your mind daily with the truth of divine abundance. Create an inner environment so consistently aligned with the frequency of the plan that when the plan tries to make itself known in your life, you are ready to recognize it, receive it, and walk in it without hesitation. Beloved, let us now speak about the matter of obedience. Because in every financial testimony of breakthrough that I have ever witnessed, at the center of it is always a moment of obedience. A moment when the plan gave a clear instruction, and the person before whom it was given had to decide whether to follow it or not. Sometimes the instruction made complete sense. Sometimes it was logical and practical, and easy to see why it would lead toward the desired destination. But more often, beloved, the instruction of divine guidance does not make sense to the human mind. It asks you to give when you feel you cannot afford to give. It asks you to speak when you feel you have nothing worth saying. It asks you to step when you cannot see the ground beneath the step. It asks you to release what you are holding in order to receive what has been prepared. And in that moment of instruction, the financial plan hangs in the balance. Not because God will withdraw it if you disobey, but because the plan cannot be accessed without the obedience that opens the door to the next level of its unfolding. Every act of obedience is a key. And the door it unlocks leads to the next corridor of the plan, which contains the next instruction, which leads to the next level of provision. And the person who obeys consistently, who has trained themselves to recognize the voice of divine guidance and to follow it even when it does not align with natural logic, that person walks through the corridors of the plan with increasing speed and increasing abundance, because they have learned the fundamental truth that the plan was designed to be walked by faith and not by sight. Think of Abraham, who was asked to leave everything familiar and go to a land he had not seen. He did not have a map. He did not have a financial projection. He did not have a guarantee that the journey would be safe or the destination would be what was promised. He had an instruction and a promise. And his obedience to that instruction was the key that unlocked the entirety of a plan so vast that its fulfillment stretched across generations. The instruction seemed small: leave and go. But what it unlocked was immeasurable. And your instruction today may also seem small. Make the call, write the words, take the meeting, give the gift, speak the truth, start the thing. But what that small act of obedience unlocks may be the door to the entire next chapter of the financial freedom that was planned for you before you were born. So today, Beloved, ask yourself this question honestly. Is there an instruction that has been placed before me that I have been delaying? Is there a step I have been shown that I have not yet taken? Is there a voice I have been hearing that I have been rationalizing away because the instruction did not align with my human understanding of how the plan should work? If so, this is the moment. This is the day. This is the message that was prepared to reach you precisely when you needed the courage to finally say yes. Say yes to the instruction. Step through the door. And watch the corridor of the plan open before you in ways that will confirm, beyond any shadow of remaining doubt, that the plan was real, that it was always real, and that it was always moving toward you even as you were moving toward it. Now, beloved, let us speak about the power of declaration in the context of God's financial plan, because declaration is not merely the speaking of positive words into an indifferent universe. Declaration is the act of a child of God, standing in the reality of the invisible plan and announcing it into the visible world. It is the prophetic act of calling what has already been written into being. It is the voice of faith saying, I see what has been prepared. I claim it. I receive it. I walk in it now. When you understand that the financial freedom you are declaring is not something you are trying to create from nothing, but something that already exists in the divine blueprint with your name on it, your declarations take on an entirely different quality. They are not wishful thinking. They are not the spiritual equivalent of crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. They are the authorized announcements of a child who knows their inheritance, who knows the plan, who knows the promise, and who is stepping into alignment with it through the power of spoken faith. Declare your financial freedom daily. Not from a place of desperation, not from a place of trying to convince a reluctant God, but from a place of deep and settled alignment with the truth that was established before your birth. Say, the financial plan God wrote for my life is active and operational. Every resource I need for my purpose flows to me freely and abundantly. Every door that belongs to my plan is open, and I walk through it with confidence. My provision is secured in the divine storehouse, and it reaches me in perfect ways under grace. Say these things not once, but daily. Say them not with strain, but with the ease of one who is simply announcing what they know to be true. And as you speak, the invisible plan presses closer to the visible world. As you declare, the gap between the blueprint and the building narrows. As your voice rings out in faith, the law moves to confirm the truth you are announcing. Beloved, let us speak now to the matter of patience, because the plan that was written before your birth is not bound by your timeline. It operates on a divine schedule that takes into account factors you cannot see and arrangements that are still being made on your behalf in the invisible realm. And the temptation in this season, for many of you who have been faithful and obedient and declaring and believing for a long time, is to reduce the size of the expectation, to negotiate downward, to say, perhaps I was wrong about the size of what was planned for me. Perhaps I should settle for something smaller and more immediately accessible. But beloved, do not negotiate with the size of God's plan. Do not reduce the blueprint to fit the current evidence of your circumstances. The evidence of your circumstances is always lagging behind the reality of the plan. What you see today is not a picture of what has been prepared. It is a picture of where you have been. The plan is always ahead of the current evidence, always further along, always larger than what has yet appeared. And if you reduce your expectation to match the current evidence, you will miss the fullness of what was always intended. Hold the size of the plan, beloved. Keep the blueprint large. When impatience whispers, settle, let faith answer, the plan is not finished yet. When the circumstances seem to contradict the promise, let your declaration remind them which one is more real. The plan is real. The promise is real. The provision is real. And the patient, faithful, declaration-filled waiting of the one who knows this is the posture that brings the plan from the invisible into the visible with the fullness of everything it was designed to contain. And finally, beloved, let us speak about the moment of arrival, because the plan does arrive. Let no one tell you otherwise. Let no amount of delay convince you that the plan was fiction. The plan arrives. It always arrives for the one who stays aligned, who stays faithful, who stays in the posture of receiving, who keeps the inner conversation in agreement with the truth, who follows the instructions as they come, who gives generously, who guards their atmosphere, who holds their identity firmly, and who refuses to negotiate the size of their expectation downward, no matter what the current circumstances seem to suggest. When the plan arrives, beloved, it does not always arrive with a trumpet fanfare. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in a conversation you almost did not have, in an opportunity that appeared in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, in a door that opened so naturally that you almost mistook it for coincidence. But it is not coincidence. It is the plan. It is the provision that was written for you before you were born, finding its way to you through the channel that your faith and your alignment and your obedience have prepared for it. And when it arrives, do 3 things. First, receive it fully. Do not minimize it. Do not downplay it. Do not immediately begin worrying about whether it will stay. Receive it with open hands and open heart, and the full gratitude of one who knows the source from which it came. Second, steward it faithfully. Remember that this is the provision of the plan, and the plan has more where this came from, but the more will follow the faithfulness with which the first portion is handled. Build with it. Invest it in your purpose. Let it serve the assignment for which it was sent. Third, testify. Tell your story. Speak the truth of what God did in your financial life to everyone who needs to hear it, which is everyone who is still waiting, still believing, still wondering whether the plan is real. Your testimony is the evidence that will strengthen their faith and shorten the distance between them and their own breakthrough. And so, beloved, we have walked together through the landscape of God's financial plan for your life. We have seen the misalignments that cause you to miss it and the alignments that bring you back to it. We have spoken of identity and purpose and instruction and timing and fear and giving and environment and obedience and declaration and patience and arrival, and every one of these threads leads back to the same central truth. The plan is real. It was written before your birth. It has your name on it. It is active and operational and moving toward you even now. And the only question that remains, the only question that has ever really mattered in the territory of your financial life, is this: will you align with it? Will you reclaim the identity that makes you eligible to receive it? Will you move toward the purpose to which the provision is attached? Will you exchange the world's instructions for the divine ones? Will you trust the timing even when it stretches your faith? Will you displace the fear with a faith so full there is no room left for doubt? Will you open your hand in generous giving and keep it open for generous receiving? Will you guard the atmosphere of your inner life with the diligence it deserves? Will you obey the instruction even when you cannot see the full staircase? Will you declare the plan into being with the authority of one who knows whose child they are? Will you hold the size of the expectation steady through every season of waiting? And will you, when the plan arrives, receive it fully, steward it faithfully, and testify loudly? If the answer is yes, beloved, then I tell you with every ounce of conviction that these years of study and seeking and teaching have given me, the plan will find you. It was always going to find you. It was written for you before you were born, and it has been moving toward you through every season, every difficulty, every detour, every delay. Nothing that has happened in your past has canceled it. Nothing in your present circumstances can withstand it, and nothing in your future can prevent it from arriving in its fullness when you stand in full alignment with the God who wrote it and the truth of who He made you to be. The plan is real. The provision is secured. The financial freedom that was designed specifically for you, before you drew your first breath, before time had a name, before the foundations of the world were laid, is on its way. And now, At last, you know not just that it exists, but exactly why you have been missing it, and exactly what you must do to miss it no more. Go and align, beloved. Go and align.